Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today is the next video in my series of Secrets of Strixhaven Commander deck techs. I'm releasing a new Strixhaven Commander deck every Thursday through the end of June when the Hobbit set drops, in addition to my usual Monday Commander deck tech videos. So if you have a request for a specific Strixhaven Commander you'd like to see me build, let me know in the comments below. As you see, today our commander is Moseo, Vane's new dean, one of the two deans of Witherbloom College. Before the Phyrexian invasion of Arcavios, Moseo was a professor of osteomancy, which he used to purge his body of glistening oil while he was mid-completion. Crazy. This left him in control of himself, but as an animated skeleton, which he's found he quite enjoys. He assumed the position of Dean of the Vane after Valentin's death, and settled into a life of scaring students, making jokes so dry they're practically sun-bleached, and spending time with his skeletal pest pet Renata. No, not that one. There we go. Cute? I'm excited to show you what I put together for Moseo, but before we get started, let's go over my deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander. I want to show off why it's such a cool card and why I gave it a whole deck. So I take about 30 cards and put them toward doing whatever my commander asks of me. This is our game plan. It's what we do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go toward supporting that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction pieces. I usually run 1 or 2 sweepers, sometimes more if it would play into the game plan, sometimes not at all, and I almost always keep to a floor of 38 lands. That way I can always hit my land drops and cast my spells and, play the game. So let's talk about our commander. Moseo, Vane's new dean, is a 2/1 legendary bird skeleton warlock for 2 and a black. He has flying. He says whenever he enters, we make a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with whenever this token attacks, you gain 1 life. So this is one of the new Strixhaven pests, as opposed to the original Strixhaven pests that gained you a life when they died. And he has an infusion ability. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained life this turn, return up to 1 target creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the amount of life you gained this turn. So, Moseo is kind of a funny card. He doesn't have any green in his color identity, which would let us include the Teacher's Pest card in our deck, since it represents Renata, his pet pest. But he does make a new pest token when he enters as a nod to Renata. He also has flying, a very normal keyword for a bird to possess, less reasonable one for a skeleton. Most of all, he has the infusion ability word, so he cares about us gaining life, and he rewards us for it by bringing other creatures back to life. And that last ability ties it all together for me. Moseo doesn't give us a way to gain life, thereby turning on his infusion ability, nor does he put cards into our yard by milling or entombing or any other effects. He wants us to contrive our own ways to make those things happen, to gain life and to get creatures in our yard, giving us the very Witherbloom-coded educational approach of wading in and learning by doing. We need to have dirt under our fingernails in order to earn the magic sparking at our fingertips. But he's just as talents-on in his teaching as he expects us to be in our learning, by giving us an example of how to accomplish those tasks, namely our Renata stand-in, the pest token. It only gains us life if we attack with it, showing us that lessons come as a result of risk and of sacrifice. By attacking, we're not only given a bit of life to turn on Moseo's infusion ability, but we're also shown that the very best way to fill our graveyard with creatures our dean can bring back is by attacking with them. It doesn't matter if we lose those creatures in the process when we can bring one of them back right away, so we have room to experiment with our attacks and see how much value we can recur from each combat. This is such a cool card design. It's both the black mentality of risking it all for just a little bit more power, and the Witherbloom philosophy of trusting the cycle of life and death. Our turns become motivated less by brinkmanship and more by discovery as we try things out. The more we learn, the more we have games with this deck that reward us for what we've learned. We may not win every time, but we do have fun every time, and the wins come as a result of our growth as a player. To that end, our deck is creature heavy. We want to put more friends on the field every turn that we're able to. Many of them have Lifelink to supplement our many other ways of gaining life, and most are mana value 4 or smaller so that they're easy for us to reanimate with Moseo at each of our end steps. Our goal with most of our turns is to swing in and force opponents to make trades, losing their blockers to our attackers to mitigate the damage we do. But we get value from creatures dying, in the form of tokens, mana, life gain, and life drain for our opponents. Then we use the life we've gained to pull our brave soldiers out of the bin and prepare for the next turn when we'll do it all over. We have other fun things to do on our turns as well. Gain and Drain is a classic strategy, so we've included it in our syllabus. Since Moseo brings our buddies back to life, we have a handful of payoffs for creatures leaving our graveyard, like tokens and copies, and even more drain. We even have a few ways to raise our fallen fellows beyond just our commander's last ability, plus a few ways to put cards in our yard so that we have more options for reanimation. By the end of each game, we've had plenty of chances to learn Moseo's lessons about life and death, usually our life and our opponent's deaths. We aren't given a strict procedure to follow to the letter, but rather a more organic praxis that instills us with skills as well as knowledge. We're allowed, encouraged even, to find our own path through the peat. And when we do, we can look at our fellow Witherbloom students and not worry about which witch is which. We may have learned in our own ways, but they've all been in a similar vein. You'll enjoy this deck if you like the idea of a play pattern that's as much about experimentation and growth as it is about board presence and tempo. Or if you're new to multiplayer Magic or inexperienced with graveyard strategies or Reanimator, and you want to learn in a way that gets your hands dirty while keeping your cards clean. Please, no matter what colors you're playing, use sleeves. So, this Moxfield list we're going over today is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of it, you will see a considering section filled with cards that I considered putting in this deck, but which ultimately did not, for me, make the cut. However, if you have a bigger budget or a smaller one, if you like what I've done and you want to go harder with it, or if you're interested by one of the ways I took this and you'd like to make that a bigger emphasis, that considering section is a great place to begin when you build your own Moseo Vane's New Dean deck. So we're going to begin today with our Lifegain section. This is 25 cards that in some way give us life that will turn on Moseo's infusion ability. We're going to start with Basilica Screecher. This is 1 and a black for a 1/2 bat. I don't know what a bat sounds like. It flies and it has Extort. Extort is a great ability. It says whenever we cast a spell, we can pay white or black. Technically, in this deck, it's just black. And if we do, each opponent loses a life, and we gain that much life. So notably, two things to understand about this. First is this is reminder text right here. So the fact that it says white or black doesn't impact our commander's color identity. It's not actually part of the text on the card, it's just reminder text. So we're still fine to include it in our mono black deck. The second is, it triggers whenever we cast any spell for any reason on anyone's turn. It's essentially making it so each of our spells has kicker, pay 1 black to make each opponent lose a life, and for us to gain that much life. Meaning if we have 3 opponents, each of them will lose 1, and we will gain 3, which is putting us most of the way toward, I think that covers like 30 some odd of our creatures that are 3 drops or less, so pretty sweet for us there. Next up is Blood Artist, just a classic, reprinted in the Secrets of Strixhaven Commander product. This is 1 and a black for a 0/1 vampire that says whenever this creature or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So this is not whenever this creature or another creature you control dies. It's any creatures on the battlefield, all of them dying, trigger the Blood Artist, including the Blood Artist itself. It can only have 1 player lose life, but we will gain life for each creature that dies, so that's pretty nice. Consuming Corruption is next. This is double black for an instant that deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, and we gain X life, where X is the number of swamps we control. So this scales up for us as the game goes on. We've got lots of swamps in this deck, so it's usually going to be a pretty solid removal spell in addition to being a shot of life for us if we need it. If we have, a bunch of swamps, we can always use this to kill something that's not the biggest thing on the battlefield, although we do want to get the most value we can out of it, simply to gain a lot of life for us and thereby turn on Moseo. Creeping Bloodsucker is next, really fun one. 1 and a black for a 1/2 vampire that says at the beginning of your upkeep, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. So this is damage as opposed to life loss, which is what Blood Artist and the Extort triggers do. They're a little bit different. They amount to the same thing usually, but we'll talk a little later about when it's relevant that it is damage versus life loss. But ultimately, Creeping Bloodsucker is doing what an Extort trigger is doing, and it's just doing it as an upkeep trigger, making it so each of our opponents is down 1 life since they take a damage, and we gain life equal to the amount of damage that was dealt. Pretty good. Meyer Triton is next. Love this card. 1 and a black for a 2/1 zombie merfolk with Death Touch. 2/1 Death Touch is incredible. Attacks all day long, blocks whenever we need it to, but we want to attack with it so that we're doing either a little bit of damage to our opponents or they're having to lose a creature no matter what, and we're likely to get it back. And when it enters, we mill 2 cards and we gain 2 life. Just a free 2 life as part of it coming in, and it puts cards in our graveyard so that we can hopefully hit some creatures in the process and then be able to reanimate them with Moseo thanks to that 2 life we gained. Reckoner's Bargain is next. This is 1 and a black for an instant from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty that says, as an additional cost, we have to sacrifice an artifact or creature, and we gain life equal to the sacrificed permanent's mana value. Then we draw 2 cards. So it's card advantage, a little bit. It's giving us a shot of life whenever we need it. We can do this, of course, when we're about to trade in combat or when we're about to have a creature lost in combat, something along those lines. But it's best to do it on our turn because that way we get the life gain from it, and we can use that toward Moseo's infusion trigger at the end step. Plus we get those cards. We can use them right away. Next is a new card from Secrets of Strixhaven Commander. This is Stensian Sanguinist. I like this because Stensia is a region in Innistrad. So in this version of Strixhaven, we've started to see more creatures that are clearly from other planes in the known Magic multiverse. So this is a vampire from Innistrad who's studying at Strixhaven. Neat. So this is 1 and a black for a vampire cleric, that's a 2/2, and it says whenever we attack, target creature gains Death Touch until end of turn. It does not require the Sanguinists themselves to attack. And whenever that creature, the one we gave Death Touch to, deals combat damage to a player this combat, this creature becomes prepared. Prepared means we have a copy of this spell, its prepare spell, in exile that we can cast with normal timing rules. And when we do that, the Sanguinist becomes unprepared. So we would have to have this happen again in order for it to become prepared again. But if it does, which it's not unlikely to, us attacking with a Death Toucher means that Death Toucher is probably getting in. If our opponent doesn't want to trade a creature or 2 for it, then they'll just take the damage, which means it's going to re-prepare the Sanguinist, and we're going to be able to cast Exsanguinate. Exsanguinate's just a great classic spell. X and double black for a sorcery. Each opponent loses X life, and we gain life equal to the life lost this way. We want to be able to do this as many times as we can, especially during our turn, so that we can keep triggering or qualifying, turning on Moseo. I keep using the word turn on because it's an end of turn trigger, the infusion trigger for Moseo. It requires us to have qualified in a way by having gained life. In any case, Exsanguinate's a nice way to drain our opponents and gain life from it. Thrawn Executioner Thane is next. This is 1 and a black for a 2/2 legendary Phyrexian vampire that says whenever 1 or more creatures we control die, each opponent loses 2 and we gain 2, but only once each turn. So a little bit of a limited Blood Artist kind of effect here, but it is 2 life at a time for us to gain, and that's not bad. Next we have Ayara, First of Lochthwain from Throne of Eldraine. Ayara is, I think, the only creature in this deck that doesn't have any generic mana costs in her casting costs. She's just triple black. That's relevant for a card we'll see later. She's a 2/3 legendary elf noble that says whenever she or another black creature we control enters, each opponent loses 1 life and we gain 1 life. So I think that there are 41 black creatures in this deck, including Ayara, so that might be enough for us to just kill our opponents, assuming we can cast all of our creatures with Ayara in play and no one ever gains any life. Probably it's not going to go that way, but it's a nice little supplement for us, draining our opponents and gaining life ourselves. In addition, we can sacrifice another black creature by tapping Ayara, and then we get to draw a card. Cool. Again, another way to cash in our creatures. Not to mention the fact that where does this creature go when we sacrifice it? Well, into the graveyard, so that hopefully we can bring it right back that same turn when we go to our end step, thanks to Moseo. Next is Bantu's Monument. This is the reason I was mentioning that Ayara is triple black rather than having any generic mana costs, generic mana intercasting cost. So this is 3 generic for a legendary artifact that makes our black creature spells cost 1 generic less to cast. This is a discount effect. I don't tend to run discount effects because it's really hard for them to be worth more than just a mana rock. Oftentimes you can get a discount, twice in a row on the same turn, and that's better than a mana rock. But most often that a mana rock is going to be more effective unless you can get about 40 cards to which that discount applies. 40 black creatures seems like it's not that hard in a heavily black deck, but as I mentioned, Ayara doesn't have any generic mana costs, so it doesn't matter that she's a black creature when Bontu's Monument can't reduce her casting costs. However, we have 40 other creatures. It's fine. So that's why I mentioned we had 41 black creatures. 41, including Ayara, means we've got just enough to justify Bontu's Monument in this deck. And I love the Bontiment because not only does it make most of our black creatures cheaper, but it also says whenever we cast a creature spell, which does not have to be a black creature spell, but most of ours are, each opponent loses a life and we gain a life. So just giving us free life gain and a little bit of drain every time we cast a creature spell, and we're a creature heavy deck. We've got 43 creatures. So yeah, the Bontiment is here to do some good work for us. Commune with Evil is next. This is 2 and a black for a sorcery from Duskmourn. It says look at the top 4 cards of your library, 1 in your hand, the rest in your graveyard, and you gain 3 life. So I'm not a huge fan of the look at the top X and put 1 in your hand sort of cards. But this one fills our graveyard, which we want to do anyway so we can bring creatures back. It gains us life, so it qualifies us to put one of those creature cards we've put into our graveyard with it. We can get it right back right away with Moseo when we go to our end step. And we get to put one of these cards in our hand, and it's not even something we have to reveal or that has to be like a creature or land. It can be whichever thing we want. So yeah, we get to find the thing we need the most, put it in our hand, and hopefully immediately go to our end step and reanimate something that's at least mana value 3. Pretty cool. Midnight Snack is next. I really like this card. 2 and a black for an enchantment from Foundations with a raid trigger. At the beginning of our end step, if we attacked this turn, which is what we want to do with this deck, we make a food token. Food tokens are artifact tokens that say pay 2, tap, and sack this token to gain 3 life. So getting to stack up some food, and then maybe on another turn, we just crack a couple of them if we need to reanimate something big. Even crack 3 of them if we need to reanimate something that's mana value 7 or greater, we can go ahead and do it. Pretty good. However, we can also pay 2 and a black and sacrifice Midnight Snack in order to make target opponent lose an amount of life equal to the amount of life we've gained this turn. So if we have plenty of food and a lot of mana, we can crack several food. Maybe we crack 3 of them and then crack the Midnight Snack, and an opponent's going to lose 9 life. That's pretty good. That's almost a quarter of their life total. And so if it's late in the game, that might be enough to just kill someone out of nowhere, especially if we can do it in a sneaky moment, because this does not say activate only as a sorcery. They might be attacking us for the win, and then we crack a bunch of food and take them out. Pretty neat. Next is Pristine Talisman. This is one of our mana rocks. It's a 3 generic mana artifact that if we tap it, we add 1 colorless mana and we gain a life. Being able to guarantee 1 life every turn in addition to making some mana, pretty solid. Shinra Reinforcements is from the Final Fantasy set. This is 2 and a black for a 2/3 human soldier that says when it enters, we mill 3 cards and we gain 3 life. So this is 3 mana to gain life and put 3 cards in our graveyard, hopefully at least one of which we can reanimate right away thanks to that 3 life. And it's got a 2/3 body of its own. Meaning if this ends up in the graveyard, we might reanimate this, then mill 3 more cards, and we'll gain 3 life, which will be during our end step, after our commander's trigger has already resolved. So we won't be getting as much value out of it then, but then we've got those cards we just milled again, so maybe we'll be able to bring one of those back next turn. Pretty good. Essence Pulse is next. This is our 1 Wrath in the deck. It's 3 and a black for a sorcery that gains us 2 life, and then gives each creature -X until end of turn, where X is the amount of life we've gained. So we have to work a little bit to make this more than just a -2/-2 to the whole board, but it's not that hard to do that work because, as you're seeing in this section, we've got a lot of cards that gain us life. So Essence Pulse can really destroy everything, and because it is a board wipe that works in the form of a penalty to toughness, it can kill things that have indestructible. So anyone who's got, I don't know, a Dark Steel Plate on their commander, or it's just, a Sapling of Kulfanor or something like that that's inherently indestructible, well, not so much with Essence Pulse. Nice. Southwind Avatar is next. This is from the recent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set. 3 and a black for a 3/4 Snake Spirit Avatar with Death Touch. Looks like it could fly, but does not apparently. It says, whenever another creature we control dies, we gain life equal to its toughness. That's pretty good. And whenever we gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. So this is a bit of text we'll see on a couple of different cards. It only cares about whether or not we've gained any amount of life, and it just has each opponent lose 1 no matter how much we gained. But it's nice to be able to see that if we have a creature with a toughness that is at least as high as its mana value, that creature dying gains us enough life to bring that creature back with Moseo at the end of turn. Pretty good. Next is Twilight Prophet, a card I really enjoy. 2 and double black for a 2/4 Vampire Cleric with flying and Ascend. Ascend means if at any point we control a permanent with Ascend and 10 or more total permanents, we suddenly have the City's Blessing. And we will have it for the rest of the game, even if we go below 10 permanents, even if we no longer have a creature with Ascend, we keep the City's Blessing no matter what. As long as we have this Ascend permanent and 10 or more total permanents, including our lands and our tokens, as long as we have both of those at some point, we get the City's Blessing and we get to keep it for the rest of the game. But why does it matter? Well, at the beginning of our upkeep, if we have the City's Blessing, we reveal the top card of our library and put it in our hand, so we're getting a free card draw basically. And each opponent will lose life equal to its mana value, and we gain life equal to its mana value. So pretty good. Just starting our turn with a little life gain and a little bit of drain and a bonus card in hand, just because we had 10 permanents. Plus a 2/4 flyer for 4. Not bad. Next up is Clackbridge Troll, another Throne of Eldraine favorite. 3 and double black for an 8/8 Troll with Trample and Haste. I know you're thinking, 8/8 Trample Haste in mono black for 5? Sounds good, what's the catch? Well, the goat's the catch. When it enters, target opponent, we get to choose who, makes 3 0/1 white goat creature tokens. And at the beginning of combat on our turn, any opponent may sacrifice a creature of their choice, and if a player does, we tap the Clackbridge Troll and we gain 3 life and draw a card. So the idea is, maybe opponent A makes these 3 goats, and we go to combat. Opponent A could say, oh, well, I'm just going to sacrifice one of these goats you gave me. And we'll say, great. We tap down our 8/8, and we get a free Revitalize, gain 3 life and draw a card. So that 3 life might be meaning that we're getting a creature back this turn, whether it's one that we have yet to attack with this combat, or we lost last turn, or we milled, or whatever, plus we're drawing a card off of it. And they're down 1 creature. And their goat died, which maybe our Blood Artist cares about. Never know. But eventually, our opponents are going to run out of goats, and they're going to have to decide, okay, who's willing to lose a creature? And if they're not, then they have to deal with an 8/8 Trampler with haste. I mean, the haste won't be relevant then, but an 8/8 trample is pretty good. And then, if the Clackbridge Troll dies, 5 life is not that hard to gain during a turn for us to bring this back with our commander, and it will come back during the end step, make 3 goats on someone's playmat, but we're not going to have combat that turn, so it's going to get to stay untapped until our next turn, acting as an 8/8 wall for our opponents to have to try and get through. Pretty good no matter what we do with it. Next up is Defiling Damogoth. This is from the new Secrets of Strixhaven Commander product. 3 and double black for a 5/4 Demon with Menace, already okay. Whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a player, we gain 1 life. So it's not quite the same as the gain 1 life on attack triggers of the new pest tokens, but it kind of works in a similar way. As long as we're attacking with something and we do combat damage to a player, we gain some life. And then at the beginning of our end step, each opponent loses an amount of life equal to the amount of life we gained this turn. That is crazy. All the life we're gaining, everyone else is losing, and it just waits until our end step to count it up. Pretty good. Next we have Grey Merchant of Asphodel. This is Gary. Everyone loves Gary, perfect in any black deck that cares about life. 3 and double black for a 2/4 zombie that says whenever Gary enters, Each opponent loses X life, where X is our devotion to black, and we gain life equal to the life lost this way. So similar to the extort trigger, we care about how much life total our opponents lost. So it's going to count it for each opponent. So if our devotion is 5, and we've got 3 opponents, each opponent's going to lose 5 life, and we're going to gain 15 life. Now, I know you're wondering, what is devotion? Devotion is you look at all of the permanents you have in play, and you count up the black mana pips in their casting costs. So for example, if we had these 8 cards in play, our devotion to black would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So each opponent would lose 16 life, and we would gain 48 life. Imagine if Gary came into play, did that for us, and we had the Defiling Damogoth in play. We could just go to our end step, and each opponent would just lose 48 life. Crazy. Gary is not just great for gaining us life and draining our opponents, he's great for reanimating as well, because what's one Gary trigger not quite as good as? The second Gary trigger, so we might as well get plenty of him. Thanks, Gary. Next we have Titan Hunter. This is a really sweet card, I think originally from the Ikoria Commander product, like Commander 2020? Yeah. So 4 and a black for a 4/5 human warrior that says at the beginning of each player's end step, if no creatures died this turn, this creature deals 4 damage to that player. So it's not really a drain effect, it's damage again. And it affects us too. If something didn't die on our turn, we're going to take 4 damage from the Titan Hunter. But this is just everyone loses a 10th of their starting life total every turn if they didn't have any creatures die. No, or rather, if creatures didn't die. They don't have to be creatures that player controls. So we've got the ability to attack in and have our stuff die and not worry about it since we can bring them back. And as long as something died, great. We're not going to take any damage from our Titan Hunter, but they are likely to do so, or it encourages them to attack other players or us. Both are fine. We can also pay 1 and a black and sack a creature to gain 4 life. So we can do this on the same turn on our turn, I should say, if we want to, so that we're gaining 4 life, which sets us up great for Moseo and prevents us from taking this 4 damage from the Titan Hunter, but also it's just a good way to get our creatures in the bin. So if we have a creature that has a mana value of 4 or less, we can sacrifice it, get whatever triggers we might have gotten from that, protect ourselves from our Titan Hunter, gain 4 life, and then immediately use Moseo to bring that creature back. So it's free. Sweet. Next up is Noxious Gearhulk. This is 4 and double black for a 5/4 artifact creature construct with Menace that says when this creature enters, we may destroy another target creature. Oh, we will. And if a creature is destroyed this way, we gain life equal to its toughness. So a great way to gain some life so that we can bring one of our creatures back in the process of taking one of our opponent's creatures out. And again, 5/4 Menace, great for us to attack with. If they want to block it, totally fine. It's not that hard for us to gain 6 life in a turn, especially once we've gotten to the point where we've got our Noxious Gearhulk going. So we might be able to bring it right back during the end step, or during another end step, once it's destroyed. Pontiff of Blight is next. This is 4 and double black for a 2/7, so a great blocker, zombie cleric. It has Extort, which we've already seen, and it gives all of our other creatures Extort. Very, very cool, including if we have our bat, our Basilicus Screecher, in play, the Pontiff of Blight points out that if creatures have multiple instances of Extort, each one triggers separately. So if we had, like I mentioned a second ago for purposes of our devotion, if we have these 8 creatures in play, and we play another creature, or if we just cast any spell, I should say, we can immediately dump all the other black mana we have, up to 8 of it, into the triggers that all these creatures are going to be putting onto the stack, because the Pontiff of Blight gives them all Extort. We can essentially say, do I want to cast 1 spell this turn and spend the rest of my mana stealing life from our opponents? Like, every mana I spend is 1 life lost for each opponent and 3 life gained for me? Or do I want to do that a second time by casting a second spell? Maybe it's late enough in the game that we can cast 3 spells. Who knows? Anyway, this is a great deep source of extort for us that we can really use to get a lot of life each turn. Bring back our big stuff, like our Vein Ripper. Vein Ripper is 3 and triple black for a 6/5 vampire assassin with flying. It has ward, sacrifice a creature, meaning the opponent that is targeting this with a spell or ability has to sacrifice a creature, or that spell or ability is countered before it even resolves. And whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 2 and we gain 2. It is target opponent again, like a Blood Artist, but much like the Blood Artist, it's also whenever a creature dies. It counts the Vein Ripper itself, it counts any creatures our opponents control, it counts token creatures, anything we sacrifice, Vein Ripper goes off. Love it. Finally in this section is Virtue of Persistence. A little bit of an expensive card, but it does a lot of work for us. This is an adventure card. If you haven't seen adventure cards before, the way this works is we can either cast Virtue of Persistence itself, which is 5 and double black, for an enchantment that says at the beginning of your upkeep, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It says a graveyard. It does not say your graveyard. So we can take whatever the best creature in any graveyard is and just steal it. It's just, now it's ours for as long as it's on the battlefield. Great. Or, while this is in our hand, we can cast this adventure. It's a sorcery called Locthwain's Scorn. 1 and a black for a sorcery that says target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn, and you gain 2 life. That's the reason it's in this section. We can Locthwain's Scorn to hopefully kill something, gain ourselves a little life, which will give us the ability to get something back at the end of turn with Moseo, hopefully. And the way adventures work is, while this is in our hand, we can either cast it as an enchantment or as this adventure. If we cast it as the adventure, it goes to exile rather than the graveyard when it's resolved, and we can then cast the enchantment from exile, even that same turn if we've got the mana to do so. Otherwise, on a later turn. So either we go adventure and then enchantment, or we just do the enchantment. Once it's hit the battlefield, we cannot cast the adventure off of it, really. It's not quite the same as like a prepared spell, but yeah, good options for us. Something we can use early on in the game, and then once we've got enough mana, we can get this out and start bringing our creatures back without needing to gain a bunch of life, thanks to Moseo. Or we could just do both. Yeah, might as well double dip. That is our life gain section. But we have other ways to gain life, particularly Lifelink. We've got a bunch of different cards that either have Lifelink or give Lifelink, like Basilisk Collar. This is a single generic mana for an equipment that equips for 2 and gives the equipped creature Death Touch and Lifelink. Great for attacking, great for blocking, especially great for attacking and blocking because it's going to gain us life based on the amount of damage it does. But notice, it gains life whenever it does damage, equal to the amount of damage it does. That's why, with these other cards, it's so relevant when we have something do damage. Titan Hunter says, at the beginning of each player's end step, if no creatures died this turn, Titan Hunter deals 4 damage to that player. Well, what if the Titan Hunter's wearing a Basilisk Collar? Well, then Titan Hunter's going to do 4 damage to that player, and we're going to gain 4 life because it's doing damage. If it were to just say loses life, like Vein Ripper does, target opponent loses 2 life, that's not damage. No damage is being dealt, so even if it's wearing the Basilisk Collar, we're not going to gain life off of that. Not so with Titan Hunter, however. Titan Hunter is going to do 4 damage and will gain 4 life. It's even true if that happens on our turn. Let's say no creatures died on our turn, Titan Hunter triggers, does 4 damage to us, but our life total doesn't change because at the same time, we gain 4 life from it, thanks to the Basilisk color it's wearing. Still pretty nice. So we have a couple of different cards that will not, that do damage specifically, and can wear that Basilisk collar for us. We have a couple that we have yet to see, but Titan Hunter is a good example, but I also want to mention the Creeping Bloodsucker. Bloodsucker also does 1 damage to each opponent, and then we gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. So that's pretty nice. It's doing 3 damage if we have 3 opponents, and we're gaining 3. But if it's wearing the Basilisk Collar, we're also gaining 3 from that lifelink from the damage it's doing. So pretty sweet as a way to sort of double up on it, beyond just using Basilisk Collar as a way to gain life during combat damage, and it has Death Touch, so makes it less likely to get blocked or more likely to trade. Both are great. Next we have Null Priest of Oblivion. This is 1 and a black for a 2/1 Vampire Cleric with Lifelink and Menace, and it has Kicker for 3 and a black, meaning when we cast it, we can pay an additional cost of 3 and a black, so we'd be paying a total of 4 and double black, so 6 mana. And if we do, when it enters, if it was kicked, we return target creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield. So we get something back without having to worry about having enough life from it. So a nice little reanimation bonus in addition to what Moseo is doing for us, that comes with a 2/1 Menace Lifelinker. Something that is very small, so easy for us to bring back, that is a little evasive, and that gains us life, and particularly gains us enough life to bring itself back, even if it dies in combat. As long as it's doing that damage, we're going to gain enough life that if we go to our end step, Moseo can bring it back. Now, I do want to make mention, we cannot kick it when Moseo reanimates it, because we're not casting it then, we're just reanimating it. So we're only going to get to use that kicker once, assuming it's in our hand once. We do have one way, I believe, in this deck to raise dead, to put a card from our graveyard back to our hand, at which point we could recast it with kicker, but yeah, different options for us. Murderous Rider is next, another Throne of Eldraine favorite. 1 and double black for a life-linking zombie knight that says when it dies, put it on the bottom of its owner's library. Okay, so we can't really as easily reanimate this with Moseo, but it's a 2/3 lifelink for 3. That seems okay, but that's not why we're running it. We're running it because it also has an instant speed adventure called Swift End. For 1 and double black, we can destroy a creature or planeswalker, and then we lose 2 life. Losing life is fine, because even if we lose 2 life, if we also gained 2 life in that turn, we can go to our end step, and Moseo doesn't care about how much our life total has risen or dropped. Moseo only cares about, did we gain life? If we gained 2, it doesn't matter that we also lost 2. Moseo will trigger and let us bring something that is mana value 2 or less back. So yeah, pretty nice. So we've got a little bit of lifelink after we want to use this removal spell, and then once the rider dies, well, it'll go to the bottom of our library, and that's okay. We may have ways to shuffle our library. We'll see that soon. Next we have Nighthawk Scavenger. This is 1 and double black for an interestingly statted creature. We'll talk about this in a moment. It's 1 and double black for a vampire rogue with flying, death touch, and lifelink. This is crazy. This is Vampire Nighthawk stats doing stuff, going crazy for us. We love it. And it says its power is equal to 1 plus the number of card types among cards in our opponent's graveyards, and then it has a toughness of 3. So at the very least, it's going to have a power of 1 because it's could be 1 plus 0. So a 1/3 flying death touch lifelink, it's gaining us a little life, that's alright. As long as an opponent has a land, like a fetch land or something in their graveyard, then that's 1 card type in their graveyards. So now this is a 2/3, making it a Vampire Nighthawk. Very good, but it can get bigger and bigger and gain more and more life for us. Once it gets to a 3/3 or bigger, it's now gaining us enough life when it attacks to bring itself back, or to let Moseo bring it back, assuming it dies in that attack. And we go to our end step and Moseo triggers and we can choose to bring it back. Either way, pretty good. Carsey Revenant is next. This is another sort of variant, I guess, on the Vampire Nighthawk from Tarkir Dragonstorm. This is 1 and double black for just a 3/3 flying death touch lifelink vampire. Pretty scary. It also has a renew ability, which is if we pay 2 and a black and exile it from our graveyard. So it's got to be in our yard in order for this to happen. So this is an option for us if we don't want to just bring it back from our graveyard. If we do that, we get to put a flying counter, a death touch counter, and a lifelink counter on one of our creatures, and we can do that only as a sorcery. Now it does say target creature. We could do that to an opponent's creature if we really want to. Maybe we need to do that. Maybe they have like an old school illusion where if you target it, it gets destroyed. Normally we don't want to give somebody a flying death touch and lifelink counter suite on one of their creatures. We want to put it on one of ours. But most of all, we don't really want to get the Revenant out of our graveyard unless we're doing it with Moseo to bring it back into play. But it's nice to have this renew option. And I've mentioned the Vampire Nighthawk, so we're running the OG, reprinted recently in Foundations. 1 and double black for a 2/3 Vampire Shaman, flying, death touch, lifelink. Hard to say no to this. Great, does a lot of work. Vito, Thorn of the Dusk Rose, is a little bit of an expensive card in our deck, monetarily at least. It is 2 and a black for a 1/3 Legendary Vampire Cleric that says whenever we gain life, target opponent loses that much life. So this is another target opponent rather than each opponent, but it's loses that much life. So if we gain 4 life, an opponent's going to lose 4 life. And that's going to happen for each instance of life gain we have. And for 3 and double black, we can give all of our creatures lifelink until end of turn. That's pretty great. Big way for us to gain an awful lot of life all at once, and each creature that does its damage and gains us life with lifelink is going to trigger Veto, and we can point all those triggers at whomever we want. Pretty great. Dread Presence is next. This is 3 and a black for a 3/3 Nightmare that says whenever a swamp we control enters, we can either draw a card and lose a life, or have it deal 2 damage to any target and us gain 2 life. Pretty good. So we can gain a little life here, or we can draw a card and pay a life. Not a big deal either way. This is another source of damage. So if we put our Basilisk Collar on this, then not only are we gaining the life from its trigger here, but we're also gaining life from the damage we're doing. So worth noting. We can also point this at any target, so we can hit planeswalkers, we can hit creatures, or we can hit our opponents. Pretty solid. Alright, next up is Elegy Acolyte. I really like this card. This is 2 and double black for a 4/4 human cleric with lifelink that says whenever 1 or more creatures we control deal combat damage to a player, you draw a card and lose a life. So if we have 4 creatures do combat damage to opponent A all at once, that's 1 or more creatures, so we're only going to draw 1 card and lose 1 life. But if we have 3 of our creatures each do damage to a different player, this says a player. So each of our creatures that does damage, or each player who is taking damage from our creatures, is going to give us a different instance of this trigger. So if we hit opponent A and opponent B and opponent C, each one of those hits is going to give us a card and cost us a life. Pretty good. And we're not worried about losing our creatures. And why is that? Because we can bring them back with Moseo. But also, Elegy Acolyte has a void ability. At the beginning of our end step, it says, if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn, or a spell was warped this turn, we're not running any warp spells, I don't think, we make a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. So we get a free little token buddy as long as something left the battlefield, a non-land permanent left the battlefield during our turn. It doesn't even have to be ours. If an opponent decides to crack a fetch land in response to something, or if we play a fetch land and we crack it, and then the Elegy Acolyte's going to be turned on for the void trigger at the end step. Pretty good. Once that's the case, as long as we have our robot token die each turn before the end step, the Elegy Acolyte will count that for our future void triggers, and we'll be able to continue to make little robots. Pretty good. Henrika Domnathi is next. We were talking about Innistrad a little bit ago. She's one of the Innistradi vampires from the Domnathi, I think they're called a clan, family, whatever it may be. She is 2 and double black for a 1/3 legendary vampire with flying that says at the beginning of combat on your turn, choose one that hasn't been chosen. That means at all. Choose one that hasn't been chosen, not this turn, but at all. We can either have each player sacrifice a creature of their choice, and that means us too. We can draw a card and lose a life, or we can transform Henrika into Henrika Infernal Seer, who is now a 3/4 flying death touch lifelink vampire. So like an even bigger Vampire Nighthawk that has the ability pay 1 and double black, and each creature we control with flying or death touch and or lifelink gets +1/+0 until end of turn. So pretty sweet. A really cool like mono black commander in all honesty, but can do a number of things for us, especially with all of our sources of lifelink. We have Vincent Valentine. Vincent is, 2 and double black for a 2/2 legendary assassin that says whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, we put a number of 1/1 counters on Vincent equal to that creature's power. So we really want our opponent's creatures to die if we can, so we can get this sweet trigger. And whenever Vincent Valentine's attacks, we may transform it, which we will do because it turns into Galleon Beast, a legendary werewolf beast that's a 3/2 with trample and lifelink. And whenever it dies, we return it to the battlefield tapped as Vincent. So it will come back in. Hopefully we killed a creature in the process. This will be on the stack when that creature dies, so we're not going to be able to have Vincent's front side see that creature die, and thereby get the counters. But if it has counters when Vincent flips, those counters will still be on the Galleon Beast, making it a bigger than 3/2 trample lifelinker. So yeah, pretty neat. Next, we have another Final Fantasy card. This is Arden the Usurper. 5 and triple black. I know, 8 mana. For a 4/4 legendary Elder Human Noble, this is Commander, remember, that gives all of our demons Menace, Lifelink, and Haste. Now, how many demons are we running in this deck? Looks like we've only got 2 demons. Huh. Well, why do we care about our demons having Menace, Lifelink, and Haste? Oh, he's got another ability, Star Scourge. At the beginning of combat on your turn, exile up to 1 target creature from a graveyard. So rather than using Virtue of Persistence to exile to reanimate the biggest creature in a graveyard, we can use Arden to exile the biggest creature in a graveyard. And if we do that, we make a token that's a copy of that card, except that it's a 5/5 black demon, which Arden is giving Menace, Lifelink, and Haste to. So the start of combat, any opponent who's doing any kind of graveyard shenanigans, we take the best creature in their graveyard, get rid of it forever with exile, by putting it into exile, make a 5/5 demon copy of it, and then swing in with it, and it's got Menace, Lifelink, and Haste. And if it goes away forever, if someone kills it, oh no, Arden's going to trigger again next turn and do it all over. Pretty sweet. And that's going to cover our Lifelink section. I've got one more section in the top of this deck, the game plan, which is things we've already seen some of. It's this drain section. It's quite large, but we've already seen several instances of it. These are cards that are causing our opponents to lose life beyond just the attacks we're swinging in with, and of course we're hitting every time because we're very good at this. No, as you've seen, Basilica's creature, it's got extort. So every time we pay that extort cost, each opponent's going to lose a life and we'll gain that much life. We like the life gain, but that life loss from our opponents is also moving us closer to winning, so that seems good. The same is true of these Blood Artist effects. Whenever a creature dies, one of our opponents is going to lose life and we'll gain a life. Creeping Bloodsucker is going to cause each opponent to take a damage, which is not the same as Drain, but it's close, so it's in this section. Each opponent's going to take a damage during our upkeep, and we'll gain life equal to the damage we deal that way. Next, we have Leech Collector. This is another prepare creature. This is 1 and a black for a 2/2 human warlock, who looks so happy, by the way, with whenever we gain life for the first time each turn, this creature becomes prepared. So we get to do the thing we're doing anyway with Moseo, and it becomes prepared with a spell called Bloodletting, a sorcery for a single black that makes each opponent lose 2 life. So this is sort of useful in the same way Extort is useful, in the sense that every time we gain life for the first time on each of our turns, all we have to do is throw an extra black at this creature, and we get to cast Bloodletting and have each opponent lose 2 life. Just a little bit of life loss every turn, every time we gain life, as long as we have 1 extra black sitting around, because we will just keep preparing Bloodletting over and over, and as long as we continue to cast it. So yeah, pretty sweet. It is also possible that maybe Leech Collector becomes prepared and we don't cast Bloodletting. We go to our next turn, cast Bloodletting at the start, each opponent loses 2, then we gain life somehow, Leech Collector becomes prepared because that's us gaining life for the first time that turn, and we can cast Bloodletting again that same turn a second time. Pretty good. Starscape Cleric is next. This is from Bloomborough. This is 1 and a black for a 2/1 Bat Cleric with flying. It can't block, and whenever we gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. We've already seen this effect before. It's pretty helpful. However, the Cleric has Offspring for 2 and a black, meaning we can pay, instead of 1 and a black, we can pay 3 and double black. And if we do, it's like we've kicked it. When it enters, it will make a 1/1 token copy of itself. So we will have a 2/1 flyer that can't block and a 1/1 flyer that can't block, both of which cause our opponents to each lose a life whenever we gain life. So scales for us. It's not the best attacker, but it sure is cheap to bring back with Moseo and keep getting more value out of. Pretty good. We've seen the Sanguinist. The Sanguinist can drain our opponents because it can let us cast Exsanguinate. Vron has a Blood Artist style trigger, drains each opponent for 2 life. For 2 life, when we gain 2 life, whenever one or more other creatures we control die the first time each turn. Ayara, whenever she or another black creature enters, we gain a life and each opponent loses a life. The Bontiment drains each opponent for 1, and we gain 1 when we cast a creature spell. Braids is next. This is 1 and double black for a 3/3 legendary nightmare, crazy cool character, that says at the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, kinda neat, or planeswalker. If you do, each opponent may sacrifice a permanent of their choice that shares a card type with it. For each opponent who doesn't, that player loses 2, and we draw a card. So this could be, we go to our end step, we sacrifice our Virtue of Persistence, even though that's pretty expensive. And if no opponent has any enchantments they can sacrifice, everyone of them has to lose 2, and we'll draw a card for each one that does. Or we just throw away one of our many lands that we have, and maybe our opponents aren't doing as well on lands, they're just not willing to throw their lands away, so instead we get a card and they lose 2 life. Braids can do a lot for us. Great. Marauding Blight Priest, we have not seen yet, but we have seen her effect. This is 2 and a black for a 3/2 Vampire Cleric. Whenever we gain life, each opponent loses a life. It's the same thing that our Starscape Cleric is doing, same thing that several different ones of our cards are doing. This just does a very good job of it and has solid stats and is 3 mana, so easy for us to bring back with Moseo. We've seen Midnight Snack. It doesn't do this sort of passive drain like many of these other cards do. It requires us to sack it to drain an opponent for quite a lot of life, depending on how much life we've gained that turn, but it's nice to have in our back pocket, and especially, as a nice way for us to keep gaining life. Veto does sort of the Big Daddy version of this, whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life effect, as opposed to Marauding Blight Priest, which whenever we gain life, each opponent's affected rather than target, but it's only 1 life no matter how much we gained. I will mention that Marauding Blight Priest had the nickname Veto's Girlfriend when it was first previewed, simply because Veto, which was originally printed in M21, and right after M21 we got Zendikar Rising, which is where the Blight Priest is from. So yeah, I've got several friends that call this Veto's Girlfriend. Anyway, Dread Presence drains opponents if we choose the second mode, when we have a swamp enter. Southwind Avatar, whenever we gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. Twilight Prophet, as long as we've got the City's Blessing during our upkeep, we reveal the top card. Each opponent loses life based on the mana value of the card we revealed, and we gain that much life, and then we put that card in our hand. Defiling Damogoth, at the beginning of our end step, each opponent loses an amount of life equal to the amount of life we've gained this turn. Gary drains each opponent for our Devotion to Black when he enters, and we gain all of that in life. And now Sir Conrad, 3 and double black for a 5/4 legendary human knight that does this. He deals 1 damage to each opponent if one of 3 things happens. So notably, this is damage, not actual life loss, so it can help us with the Basilisk Collar if we want to do that. Sir Conrad in a Basilisk Collar is really mean, and this is why. Because Sir Conrad does 1 damage to each opponent whenever another creature dies. Just straight up Blood Artisty effect like that. Or whenever a creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield. Notably, that's a graveyard, just like another creature, not another creature we control. So that means if a creature gets milled, if a creature is discarded, if a creature otherwise goes to the graveyard somehow, Sir Conrad's going to see that and do a damage to each opponent. Or if a creature leaves our graveyard, Leaves our graveyard is something that's going to happen a lot in this deck when Moseo is bringing our creatures back. So anytime creatures die, creatures go to the graveyard from somewhere other than the battlefield, or our creatures leave our graveyard, Sir Conrad's going to do 1 damage to each opponent. So this is going to be pretty annoying for our opponents and pretty great for us. In addition, we can pay 1 and a black and each player mills a card. Putting a card in our graveyard maybe gives us something we can get back with Moseo. It also, if there's any creatures that go into any graveyards from that, that will trigger Sir Conrad's second clause, and he'll do 1 damage to each opponent. Very nice. We've seen the Titan Hunter. It does 4 damage to each player during that player's end step if no creatures died that turn. Pontiff of Blight gives us the ability to do even more extorting with all of our creatures and with itself. And Vein Ripper has another Blood Artist style trigger, having an opponent lose 2 life and us gaining 2 life whenever any creature dies. Pretty good. And so those are the sections of what I think of as our game plan. Oh, hey, did you just like the video? Nice. Thank you. I'm just kidding. You don't have to like the video if you don't want to. I appreciate you just watching. Thank you for being here with me. So that is not the end of it. We're going to keep going. We've got our sections of support to talk about now, starting with our card advantage, which as usual, I've just tagged as draw. It doesn't mean all these cards draw us a card, like the draw card action. They just give us access to more cards that we can cast and use. So Deadly Dispute is 1 and a black for an instant with an additional cost for us to sacrifice an artifact or creature. Then we draw 2 cards and we make a treasure token. So we get a little bit of acceleration. We get to have 2 cards, which is not exactly card advantage depending, but if we sacrificed a token in the process here, maybe it is, we'll see. So yeah, helps us a little bit. Gives us cards, gives us treasure, we like it both. Similarly, Reckoner's Bargain, instead of giving us treasure, gains us life, equal to the sacrificed permanence value, mana value rather, and then we draw 2 cards. Ayara can tap and sack another black creature to draw us a card. Braids can draw us cards during our end step for each opponent who doesn't sacrifice a permanent that shares a type with a permanent we sacrifice to her trigger. Commune with Evil lets us look at the top 4 and put 1 in our hand, as well as putting the rest in our graveyard and gaining 3 life. Morbid Opportunist is another death trigger card. This is 2 and a black for a 1/3 human rogue that says whenever 1 or more other creatures die, draw a card, only once each turn though. So that's each turn, so we can definitely have things die on opponents' turns and draw a card off of that. It just doesn't trigger on the Morbid Opportunist itself, and it doesn't trigger more than once in each turn, or even draw us more than 1 card each turn. But it doesn't have to be creatures that we control either, so yeah. Dread Presence. When a swamp enters, we can draw a card and lose a life. Elegy Acolyte gives us the ability to draw cards and lose life whenever we do damage, combat damage to other players. Henrika can have us draw a card and lose a life as well. You'll notice we've got lots of ways to lose life in the process of drawing cards. It's because we're going to have plenty of life to lose, no big deal. Solemn Simulacrum is next. This is 4 generic mana for a 2/2 artifact creature golem that says when it enters, we Rampant Growth. We search our library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. And when it dies, we can draw a card. So why would it die? Well, we've got lots of ways to sacrifice it. We've got ways to attack with it. We want it to attack if we can, especially because if it dies, all we have to do is make sure that we've gained 4 life, and Moseo can bring it back, letting it re-enter and giving us another Rampant Growth effect and another potential card draw, because it's going to be sitting there as a blocker. It's going to be sitting there waiting for us to sacrifice it or attack with it next turn. Yeah, the sad robot can do it all for us. Twilight Prophet, we've already seen, gives us an extra card in our hand at the start of each of our turns if we have the City's Blessing. And Clackbridge Troll can draw us a card at the start of combat if one of our opponents chooses to sacrifice a creature in order to tap down the troll. Plus, when we draw that card, we gain 3 life. Pretty good. So that is our card advantage section. Next, we're going to talk about acceleration, which as usual, I have just shorthanded as ramp. So Soul Ring, of course we're running Soul Ring. It's a single generic mana for an artifact that taps for 2 colorless mana. Pretty good. Even if we don't have a lot of big creatures, we sure do want to be able to accelerate fast, and Soul Ring is always an explosive start. So yeah, we want it. Wayfarer's Bauble is next. This is 1 generic mana for an artifact that if we pay 2, tap and sack it, we get to Rampant Growth. So this is just Rampant Growth for 1 more mana that we don't have to pay on the same turn as we activate it. So Eat your heart out, green. Next is Arcane Signet. This is 2 generic mana for an untapped mana rock that makes 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. So in this deck, it only makes black. But it's 2 mana to cast it, and it comes in untapped. We would run this if it came in tapped. Oh look, we are. It's called Charcoal Diamond. 2 generic mana for an artifact that enters tapped and makes black. Seems good. That's all we need. Just a little bit of acceleration in our color. So yeah, that's what we've got. Deadly Dispute makes a treasure. Pristine Talisman taps for colorless and also gains us life. We next have the Warring Triad. This is 3 generic mana for a 5/5 legendary artifact creature god with flying, trample, and haste. So why is it in our ramp section? Well, as long as there are fewer than 8 cards in our graveyard, it isn't a creature. So even though this is a creature spell that we're casting, so it would trigger our Bontu's Monument, even if we know it's going to come in and its ability is going to make it no longer a creature, it is still a creature spell in the stack, worth recognizing. But it's not going to be that often that we have more than 8 cards in our graveyard, at least early game, because most of the time Moseo is pulling at least 1 creature card out of our graveyard every turn. So getting up to 8 is not super easy. It's not really that hard, but it's not super easy. So the Warring Triad isn't necessarily a 5/5 flying, trample, haste creature we can use. Instead, it's a mana rock. If we tap it and mill a card, target player adds 1 mana of any color. So we can give our opponents mana if we want to be a little political about it. But even better is just we tap it, put a card in our graveyard that hopefully we can bring back with Moseo, and which also gets it a little bit closer to becoming a creature, and we get a little bit of mana. What's especially nice is it has haste. So even if tapping it, or even if we do have it come in as a creature, because we have plenty of cards in our graveyard, if we still just need it for mana, we can tap it for mana right then. Pretty good. Next we have Pitiless Plunderer. This is another death trigger card. 3 and a black for a 1/4 human pirate that says whenever another creature we control dies, make a treasure. No more needs to be said about it. It's a great card. Sad Robot enters and Rampant Growths us. And finally, Black Market is yet another death trigger card. 3 and double black for an enchantment that says whenever a creature dies. Doesn't say non-token, doesn't say creature you control. Any creatures that die, put a charge counter on the black market. Charge counters don't have an inherent mechanical meaning, they're just used by this card. And it says at the beginning of our first main phase, we put a black in our mana pool for each charge counter on black market. Pretty sweet. It's just a big burst of black mana that we get to use for whatever we need to cast. We can't hang on to it. We've got to use it during that first main phase, but we're going to be able to use all of its mana almost every time. And if we need to cast things later in the turn, well, that's what we have all our lands for. No big deal. So that is our acceleration section. I mentioned before that we had Bontu's Monument as a discount, and I've set it aside in the discount section here just to call it out. And I've put it in this part of the video because it's right by our ramp section, our acceleration section. This does accelerate us a little bit by making our creature spells cheaper, our black creature spells, that is. I did just want to set it apart from the rest of the acceleration because it doesn't give us a way to make mana, it just gives us a way to cast our creature spells a little more easily, as well as, of course, drain our opponents and gain life whenever we cast our creature spells. Pretty good. That's that discount section. So let's move on now to acceleration. To interaction. This is, as usual, I've just tagged it as removal. We're going to start with Defile, a single black mana for an instant that gives target creature -1/-1 until end of turn for each swamp we control. So this is only going to get better as the game progresses, only going to get more and more powerful. Single mana, instant speed, kills things. Yeah, this is a good card in our mono black deck. Accursed Marauder is next. 1 and a black for a 2/1 zombie warrior that says when it enters, each player sacrifices a non-token creature of their choice. So we don't get the choice of what our opponents are losing, but each opponent's losing something, and so are we. We can get rid of whatever we want to, but we sure can get rid of Accursed Marauder itself, which is totally fine. We had this come in, we get a death trigger, and maybe death triggers from our opponent's creatures dying as well. If we cast this with Bontu's Monument out, we got to do a little bit of drain in the process of that, and it's cheap to recur it with Moseo, so that maybe at our end step, it comes back in and everyone's got to sacrifice something again. That seems pretty good. Consuming Corruption is next. We've already seen it. Lets us do the Defile thing, but in the form of damage, and it can hit creatures or planeswalkers, and it gains us life in the process. Feed the Swarm is my favorite. Still, I know there's now like 3 of these that do something similar to this. I still like Feed the Swarm best. It's 1 and a black for a sorcery that says destroy target creature or enchantment that an opponent controls, and we lose life equal to that permanent's mana value. We're going to have plenty of life to throw around, not worried about it. It does feel better with some of the other versions of this spell that are now out, like Withering Torment, to be able to hit creatures and not worry about losing a lot of life, or enchantments as well, since this is our enchant removal spell. But I still like the fact that this is just 2 mana, so I'm still a fan of Feed the Swarm. Braids, much like Accursed Marauder, gives our opponents the ability to sacrifice permanents, and if they don't, we're gaining, they're losing life and we're drawing cards, so that's pretty good. Murderous Rider lets us kill a creature or planeswalker at the cost of 2 life and 1 in double black. Dread Presence can do direct damage every time we play a swamp. Henrika can have each player sacrifice a creature, Accursed Marauder style. Next is, it's Witch of the Moors. I really love this card. Back when the only way to play things on Arena was either Standard or Historic, and Historic just meant everything on Arena. Witch of the Moors, I built a whole deck around it. It's just super, super fun. 3 and double black for a 4/4 human warlock with Death Touch that says at the beginning of your end step, if you gained life this turn, doesn't matter how much, each opponent sacrifices a creature of their choice and you return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So, worried about your Null Priest of Oblivion coming back with Moseo and not being able to kick it so you can raise something else or reanimate something else? No worries, let Witch of the Moors bring it back into your hand so that you can cast it next turn. We get to do this every turn, and each opponent loses a creature each turn because we're going to be gaining life every one of our turns. So cool. Look at this apple. Noxious Gearhulk, of course, enters and we can destroy another target creature. And Virtue of Persistence, we have the Lochthwain Scorn adventure to give -3/-3 to a creature, which is Last Gasp. Plus we gain 2 life off of it. Pretty good. That is our interaction section. And as I mentioned before, we are only running 1 Wrath. It's Essence Pulse. Gives us a reward for all the life that we've gained during our turn, plus starts us off with 2 life. Pretty solid for us, even if it's just -2/-2 for the whole board. Pretty good. And that covers our vegetables, our support sections. We're going to go through several sections now of all the supplemental ways that help our game plan. I've mentioned death triggers several times now. These are they. These are the cards that trigger when something dies and give us a reason to care about that. Blood Artist has a player lose a life and we gain a life. Vron, when one of our creatures dies, each opponent loses 2 and we gain 2, but only once each turn. Also only once each turn, whenever any other creature besides Morbid Opportunist dies, we draw a card. Elegy Acolyte isn't actually a death trigger, but it functions like one with its void ability. It cares much the way that Moseo does if at our end step something has happened, particularly if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn, or a spell was warped, which we're not doing, but maybe one of our opponents will. You never know. Probably not during our turn, but you never can tell. As long as any non-land permanent left the battlefield, that's not quite the same thing as a death trigger, but it's pretty close. So yeah, we get a little robot. Southwind Avatar, whenever another creature we control dies, we gain life equal to its toughness. Black Market, whenever any creature dies, it gets a charge counter, which is going to just become black mana on our next pre-combat main phase. Sir Conrad, in all the many ways, if creatures die or go to the graveyard in any way, or just leave our graveyard, Sir Conrad's going to deal 1 damage to each opponent. And Vein Ripper, whenever any creature under anyone's control dies, it will do 2 damage to an opponent and will gain 2 life. So that is our death triggers section. We care about deaths, so let's look at our sacrifice outlets. These are ways to get some deaths happening if we want to. Deadly Dispute and Reckoner's Bargain both work a similar way. 1 and a black to sacrifice an artifact or creature and draw us 2 cards, and Deadly Dispute will make us a treasure. Reckoner's Bargain will gain us life equal to the sacrifice permanent's mana value. Ayara lets us sack a black creature to draw a card. Braids lets us sacrifice a permanent, artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker to put our opponents in a difficult choice. Henrika can give us the ability to sacrifice one of our creatures if we want to return it to the battlefield and thereby rebuy its enters trigger, bring it back with Moseo, for example, by forcing each player to sack a creature. Titan Hunter just has a sacrifice ability built in, much like a Yara, but it's 1 and a black, and sack a creature to just gain 4 life. And because that doesn't tap the way that a Yara's does, we can keep doing it if we want to and keep gaining life if we want to bring back something even bigger. Pretty cool. That is our outlets section. Let's talk about other ways we have to get our cards into the graveyard. We've seen all these already as well. Mire Triton mills us 2 when it first comes in. Commune with Evil kind of mills us 3 because we look at the top 4 and we put 1 in our hand and the rest in our graveyard. Shinra Reinforcements mills us 3 when it enters. The Warring Triad lets us mill a card every time we tap it for mana. And Sir Conrad lets us pay 1 and a black to have each player mill 1 whenever we activate that ability. Cool. That's our graveyard section. We have a little bit of recursion that isn't just from Moseo, and we've seen all but one of these. Null Priest of Oblivion, if kicked, can reanimate a creature back to the battlefield. Vincent Valentine will recur itself to the battlefield when its backside dies. Witch of the Moors lets us put a creature card from our graveyard back into our hand, as well as forcing each opponent to sack a creature if at our end step we've gained life this turn. Virtue of Persistence starts our upkeep by putting a creature from a graveyard onto the battlefield under our control, and Arden doesn't actually recur things, but does exile a creature and make a token copy of it that's a 5/5 demon. That seems all pretty good, but we also have Skeleton Crew. This is 3 and a black for a 3/3 Skeleton Pirate that gives each other creature we control that's a skeleton or pirate +1/+1, which is nice because Moseo is a skeleton. So this ability, this Lord ability, makes Moseo into a 3/2 flyer. Nothing wrong with that. Do we have other pirates in the deck? Well, we've sure got Pitiless Plunderer at least, which is a 1/4, so with the crew in play, it's a 2/5, it's still a pretty good blocker. In addition, the crew says whenever 1 or more creature cards leave our graveyard, which is something that's going to be happening a lot thanks to Moseo, we make a 2/2 Black Skeleton Pirate creature token, which is getting this +1/+1, so it's really a 3/3. And for 5 and a black, we can return Skeleton Crew from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So a little bit expensive, but it's a way for us to recur our things, and that seems pretty good. Yeah, pretty nice. So that is our recursion section. Next up, we have our payoffs. These are cards that reward us for doing the things we were already going to do. Starting with Leech Collector. Leech Collector becomes prepared, giving us the ability to pay 1 for Bloodletting and make each opponent lose 2 life each turn whenever we gain life for the first time each turn. So every time we gain life, we're getting a chance to drain each opponent for 2 for a single black mana. Starscape Cleric lets us have each opponent lose 1 life whenever we gain life, as does its Offspring token. Bloodthirsty Aerialist, who we haven't seen yet, is just a payoff card, but it's a good one. 1 and double black for a 2/3 Flying Vampire Rogue that says whenever we gain life, we put a 1/1 counter on the Aerialist. I can't express how helpful this card can be. It was killer in Standard when it was in Standard. It's just a flyer that gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it seems like more of a threat than it actually is, and thereby becomes removal bait. So our opponents are using removal on things that, it becomes a big flyer, sure, but it doesn't gain us life, it doesn't bring any creatures back from the graveyard, it's just a big threat and a great blocker, so they're going to use the removal on that rather than on something that might be better for them to use them on for them, but worse for us. So that's fine for us because it only costs 3 mana, so it's easy for us to bring back with Moseo. Desecrated Tomb is next. This is 3 generic mana for an artifact that says whenever 1 or more creature cards leave our graveyard, we make a 1/1 bat with flying. Pretty good. Another way, like our Skeleton Crew, to reward us for creatures leaving our graveyard with Moseo every turn. Neat. Marauding Blight Priest gives us a little bit of life loss for our opponents whenever we gain life. Midnight Snack rewards us for attacking by giving us a food at our end step. Twilight Diviner is next. This is 2 and a black for a 3/3 Elf Cleric Flump from Lorwyn Eclipsed that says when it enters, we Surveil 2. That's nice. Surveil 2 can put cards in our graveyard. It's a possibility. Maybe we want to do it that way. You never know. And whenever 1 or more other creatures we control enter, if they entered or were cast from a graveyard. So whenever Moseo brings creatures back, we make a token that's a copy of one of those creatures, and this only triggers once each turn. So if we're doing multiple reanimations in a turn, like maybe we have Virtue of Persistence in play, as well as Moseo triggers at the end, well, we're only going to get this trigger during the first one of those, which would be Virtue of Persistence, but that's okay. It's still nice to be able to have as a good option for us. And making token copies of the creatures we're getting back, since we're getting them back anyway, that's great. It sort of breaks the whole we attack with several creatures, maybe lose a few of them, and get one back idea. This is doing a similar bit of work for us that having multiple reanimation effects is doing, in the form of giving us multiple things back whenever we get one. Yeah. We've seen Veto. Veto rewards us for gaining life by making target opponent lose that much life. Essence Pulse rewards us for gaining life because that's the amount of penalty to power and toughness that each creature is going to get when we cast it. Skeleton Crew rewards us for having our creature cards leave our graveyard by giving us a 2/2 black Skeleton Pirate. Southwind Avatar, again, whenever we gain life, each opponent is going to lose a life. Sir Conrad is going to see things die and leave our graveyard, and also go to graveyards without going there from the battlefield. So we get that damage to each opponent. And the Witch of the Moors also cares about us gaining life, thereby forcing each opponent to sack a creature and letting us raise dead one of our creatures to our hand. Pretty good. That is our payoff section. I want to go over our tokens just a little bit. These are cards that make tokens for us. We have Starscape Cleric, which can come in and it can make an offspring token. Pretty nice. Desecrated Tomb makes these bat tokens when we have creatures leave our graveyard. Twilight Diviner can make a copy once per turn of a creature that entered under our control or was cast from a graveyard. Entered from a graveyard or was cast from a graveyard under our control. Elegy Acolyte can give us a robot token if we have turned on its void ability. Skeleton Crew, the same way that Desecrated Tomb gives us a bat, Skeleton Crew can give us a Skeleton Pirate. And Arden can give us those 5/5 demon tokens that are copies of whatever creature we have exiled from a graveyard at the beginning of combat. So that is our token section. We have two last little sections. Our protection section, which is just the Swifties. Swiftfoot Boots is 2 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 1 and gives the equipped creature hexproof and haste. Hexproof is what we're really doing here. We want to be able to give Moseo or our Twilight Prophet or Twilight Diviner or any one of our creatures that we really want to protect, giving them hexproof for a single generic mana with the boots is pretty nice. And haste could be relevant too, you never know. That is our protection section. And then Henrika pumps things because we can pay the 1 and double black on her backside and give all of our flyers, death touchers, and or lifelinkers +1/+0 until end of turn, and we can do that as many times as we want, or that we can pay for in the same turn. It seems strange to give Henrika her own pump section, but as I mentioned at the start, there is that considering section at the bottom of this page. There are lots of other cards in all of these categories, including this pump section, so I didn't want to take her off of it in case you decided you wanted to run more cards that might pump things up. It's a possibility. But that does cover all of the spells in our deck. As usual, we're going to go over our land base now, starting with our swamps. We've got a bunch of them. There are 24 swamps in this deck. Of course, we're using the Secrets of Strixhaven art. So yeah, plenty of basic swamps helps us a lot because we have several cards that care about the number of swamps we have. So we want to be able to run plenty of basics in our monocolor deck so that we always have untapped sources of our color. We have these 6 what I call fixing lands, starting with Path of Ancestry. This is a land that enters tapped and makes 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. So it's sort of the same text as Arcane Signet, and in this deck just makes black. However, we can use its mana to cast creature spells, and when those creature spells share a creature type with our commander, we scry 1. Now that's not that many creatures in this deck. I mean, we have 1 other skeleton, and we have 2 other warlocks. But we do have Moseo himself, and Moseo, being our commander, shares types with himself, so a little bit of scry on a tap land, it's not so bad of a trade-off. If we need a little acceleration, we have Myriad Landscape. This is a tap land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to search our library for up to 2 basic land cards that share a land type. So in this deck, 2 of our basic swamps, then we put them on the battlefield tapped and shuffle. So while these lands do come in tapped, and Myriad Landscape comes in tapped, and we have to pay 2 tap and sack it to make this all happen, we did turn 1 land drop into 2 lands in play, so it is acceleration, just not super fast acceleration. Similarly, Temple of the False God. I know not everyone's into this card, but I think it's great for the type of decks that I built. This is a untapped land that taps for double colorless mana, like Soul Ring. It's a soul land. We just can't activate it unless we have at least 4 other lands in play. So it needs 5 or more, including itself. So if your opening hand is, I don't know, Myriad Landscape and Temple of the False God and no other mana sources, you probably want to mulligan that. But if you're getting this on turn 5, you can jump from producing 4 mana to 6 mana right away, and that's pretty solid. A little bit of acceleration, even if it doesn't accelerate you in the more valuable early turns, still accelerates you. It still means you can cast more spells, and that's worth doing. Beyond that, we are also running 3 Streets of New Capenna fetch lands, all of the ones that let you find swamps. So they all work like Obscura Storefront. It's a land that says when it enters, we sacrifice it, and when we do, we search our library for a plains, island, or swamp, put it on the battlefield tapped, shuffle our library, and gain a life. So this is different from Evolving Wilds or Fabled Passage or anything like that, because it can only find specified basic types, and in our deck, it'll only find a swamp, because that's all we've got of these types. And it will put it into play tapped, much like Evolving Wilds, but we don't get to choose when that happens. It sacrifices itself when it comes in, as opposed to, Evolving Wilds or Terramorphic Expanse or Fabled Passage, which we might want to crack those things at a different time. The disadvantage to running one of those is that it doesn't gain us life, and that might make the difference on one of our turns between having gained 2 and gained 3 life, so we can bring back a 3-drop rather than a 2-drop, or maybe a 3-drop rather than nothing else because we don't have other options. So not a perfect option for us here, but a little bit of extra life gain in our land base is nothing to sneeze at, especially if it comes in the form of a basic land that we can definitely use next turn. So Obscura Storefront does that for us. Maestro's Theater and Riveteur's Outlook both do the exact same thing. The only difference is that they can also find other land types that we are still not using. So as far as we're concerned, these 3 cards are all the same. Finally, we have these 8 utility lands. So we're going to start by talking about Accursed Duneyard, a really cool card from the Ether Drift Commander product. Originally, yep, that's where it was first printed. So this is an untapped land, taps for colorless, or we can pay 2 and tap it to regenerate a Shade, Skeleton, Spectre, Spirit, Vampire, Wraith, or Zombie. Regenerate means the next time, it sort of puts a protective bubble around that creature. The next time that creature would be destroyed, whether with a destroy effect or by combat damage, instead, we tap it, we remove it from combat, and we heal all damage on it. Kind of a weird way of explaining regenerate, but it's very simple, and regenerate is weird. So yeah, this is an ability that protects, it seems like a lot of different creature types. And yeah, it protects our commander, and that's relevant, but it also protects 21 of our other creatures. I think we're running 14 different vampires in this deck, plus we've got zombies, we've got at least, I think, 1 spirit, we've got some other skeletons, etc. So yeah, Accursed Duneyard can protect our creatures if we don't want them to die. If we do want them to die, that's alright, we can get them back with Moseo. If we don't want them to die, well, we can regenerate. Pretty good as an option. Adventurer's Inn and Radiant Fountain are doing the same thing for us in this deck. These are both cards that enter and gain us 2 life, and can tap for colorless mana, and don't come in tapped. The only difference between them is that Adventurer's Inn is a town. Radiant Fountain does not have a subtype. But otherwise, they are bonus, little bit of life gain, that can't hurt us. Demolition Field is next. This is the one answer I have to problematic non-basics that our opponents might be running. Generally, the decks I build are for pods that I have found mostly don't want to deal with each other's land bases. Like, they don't want to touch them. People feel icky doing mana denial, and that's a fair way to play Magic. But you have to have something that can answer a problematic non-basic, like Maze of Ith, or Glacial Chasm, or a Rogue's Passage when you're running a Voltron deck. Any non-basic that is superpowering your opponent's, or that is any non-basic your opponent's running, that is superpowering their game plan, or is stymieing your own, is a problem. So it's worthy of having an answer, and Demolition Field is one that doesn't leave any bad taste in anyone's mouth if there's someone who already accepts that an interaction is part of Magic. So this is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 2 tap and sack it to destroy a non-basic land that an opponent controls, and that opponent then gets to search for a basic land, put it on the battlefield untapped, and shuffle. And so do we. So neither we nor they are down a land. We're not even down mana in that turn, other than the mana we spent to activate the demo field. But we've gotten rid of the thing that's stopping us from making progress with our game plan, or that's helping them too much, and that's fair. High Market is next. This is another sacrifice outlet for us. It's an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can tap it and sack a creature to gain life. Just a little bit of life in exchange for a creature can sometimes be enough to get that creature right back. Which, why would we want to do that? Well, maybe it has a great interest trigger. Maybe we're at 4 life gained this turn, and we want to gain 1 more, or 5 life gained this turn, and we want to gain 1 more by sacrificing our Noxious Gear Hulk, so now we've gained 6, and we can get the Gear Hulk back. Blow something up, gain even more life. High Market's there for us. Rogue's Passage is next. This is always a fun one. It's an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay for, tap, and make a target creature unblockable this turn. So obviously we want to use this for our own creatures if we can, with our drain effects, and of course the fact that there's multiple opponents for every opponent. People are going to get down pretty low eventually. Rogue's Passage can definitely close the game out for us. We can also use it politically by promising to make an opponent's creature unblockable if they attack a different opponent, which we probably want to wait until they attack that opponent before we activate the Rogue's Passage. But we do that and we say, just leave me alone for a turn cycle or 2 and I'll help you get in with that other opponent. And a lot of times people will say yes to that because we're using our mana resources to help them out. But we can also use it if opponent B attacks opponent A, and opponent B's got a really good attack, but opponent A has solid blockers. We can just make opponent B's creature unblockable. We don't have to ask anyone for that. You know, that's always a funny thing to do. No one expects, a third party to come in and help one person out or not. But if we're doing that, we are spending our mana, but they're spending their attacks phase to kill one of our opponents. That seems like a worthy use of 5 mana to me. 5 because it's 4 and tapping the Rogue's Passage itself. So usually this is for us, but we can use it in 2 other ways, and all of those are useful. Next we have Westvale Abbey. Really, really fun card. I'm so excited I got to put it in this deck. This is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 5, tap it, and pay a life to make a 1/1 black and white human cleric creature token. So an extra little token for us? Sure. Little token, what's that doing for us? Well, it's getting us closer to its last ability, which is pay 5 and tap and sacrifice 5 creatures. That can include our commander, it can include these tokens, it can be whatever we want. And if we do that, we transform this land and untap it, and it becomes Ormondal Profane Prince, a 9/7 legendary demon with flying, lifelink, indestructible, and haste. And if we have Arden in play, Menace, just in case. So Ormondal, just the games that you can play a Westvale Abbey and flip it are always memorable, super, super fun. It's indestructible. It flies. It's got lifelink. It's going to help us out. You want Ormondal to come out. What's especially nice is this does not say activate only as a sorcery. So we can do this on our turn and take advantage of its haste and attack with it. But imagine doing this in response to an attack. We say, okay, before blocks, tap my land, sack the creatures you thought I was going to block with, and now I've got this massive, indestructible, flying, lifelinking demon, and I'll block one of your creatures and let the other ones through because I don't care about their damage anymore because I just gained 9 life. Oh, now it's my turn? Well, attack with Ormondal. Seems like a good time. Finally, we have Witch's Cottage, yet another Throne of Eldraine card. This is a swamp, just a non-basic swamp, but it does have the swamp type, so it inherently taps for black, and it enters tapped unless we control 3 or more other swamps. So if we get this out early on, it's a tap land that taps for black, that's fine. But if we get it out a little bit later, if it enters untapped, we can put a creature card from our graveyard on top of our library. That's not as good as drawing it for sure, but I mean, that's just free reanimation, and not reanimation, free like recursion from our graveyard in our land base. Yeah, if we really want that card back, we could wait to get it back with Moseo, or we could just draw it next turn because we put it back on top thanks to our Witch's Cottage. And that triggers our cards that trigger when we have creatures leave our graveyard, like our Desecrated Tomb. We get one of the creatures we want back on top of our library. We get it there, plus we get a bat. Pretty sweet. Yeah, Witch's Cottage can really be helpful to us, and it's such a low cost of inclusion. Yeah, I don't know why you wouldn't put it in there. And that sums it up. Again, I'm releasing new Secrets of Strixhaven Commander decks every Thursday through the end of June when the Hobbit set drops, so let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a specific commander or style of deck. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to support what I do here, make sure to like and subscribe, ring the bell if you want to be notified when my videos go live, consider becoming a member of the channel if that's something you're into. It's something new I've started, and I'm eager to see people do that. And most of all, remember that magic is fun. You should play more Magic.